Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. It is 2024 and the American economy is back, baby. You don't have to take my word for it. As we've been covering for months on this show, there has been and is a gap, lingering gap between the way the economy is actually performing based on every metric we have, which is incredibly well, and the way voters say they feel about the economy, which has been quite pessimistic. Yet every day brings some new bit of data that demonstrates that the American economy is roaring. Today, it is this chart, which you might call the GDP Olympics. Of all of the most developed economies on Earth, which one do you think is growing the fastest? Well, it's Joe Biden's United States, by a lot. That big green bar at the top is our GDP here in the good old US of A. Do you see how much bigger it is than all the others? The US is literally the best economy in the world. Last year, our economy grew much faster than Japan, the second best economy, more than double the rate of Canada and a distant third. Not only that, but we are projected to blow the competition out of the water again this year. And this is just one data point among many. Wages, in real terms, real wages, the amount of actual purchasing power, are rising. Inflation, by some measures, is falling below the Fed's target, with an anticipation they may start cutting interest rates. Investment in manufacturing has now set record highs. New business formation, that's people making small businesses, has set record highs. Household wealth has set a record high. And today, amid all this good news, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell got just about as enthusiastic as it is possible for a central banker like him when discussing the state of the U.S. economy.
The labor market, 3.7% unemployment, indicates that the labor market is strong. We've had just about 2 years now of unemployment under 4%. That hasn't happened in 50 years, so it's a good labor market. And we've seen inflation come down. We've talked about that. So we've got 6 months of good inflation data and an expectation that there's more to come. So this is a good situation. Let's be honest. This is a good economy.
Just to be clear, for a Fed chair, that's the equivalent of stripping off your clothes and twerking for 3 minutes straight. OK, that's like that. No one does that. All right. The last 3 years of the Biden administration has essentially, get this, put us back on track economically in a better spot than if COVID hadn't happened. I want to say that again. OK, as the White House noted a few weeks ago, quote, the level of U.S. real GDP in 2023 even exceeded some pre-pandemic forecasts, including that of the Congressional Budget Office and the IMF. That's right. The economy did better last year than the economic projection showed before the pandemic, before COVID, when nobody knew there would be this cataclysmic event and recession in 2020. Back in 2019, the Congressional Budget Office, for example, thought GDP would grow by an average of 1.7% in 2023. Again, looking out into the future, not knowing there's going to be a pandemic. It actually grew at 2.5%. And speaking of the pandemic, Trump and his supporters often argue it's unfair to compare Biden's economy to Trump's, since, again, COVID tanked the world economy in 2020. But here's the thing. Listen to this, okay? If you ignore 2020, Joe Biden was not president, Donald Trump was, but let's just throw it out, okay? If you ignore 2020, the economy under Biden is still doing better than Trump's was. Take away COVID, give him a mulligan. As the Washington Monthly notes, quote, under Biden from January 2022 to December 2023, employment grew at an average annual rate of 2.4% compared to a 1.5% rate under Trump from January 2017 to February 2020. So again, if you bend over backwards to give Donald Trump the most favorable comparison possible, where you completely take him off the hook for the economy tanking under his watch when he was president due to COVID, and you ignore the first year of the Biden presidency when they had the huge boom as the world reopened, take that all off the board, Joe Biden's economy is still whooping Trump's butt. So the question becomes, if the economy is doing so well, why don't voters think it is? And I think that's starting to change. There are basically two reasons. So one thing you got to realize is simple partisanship. Republicans will never give a Democrat credit for a good economy. And while there's the same thing, vice versa and reverse, it's asymmetric, which is to say Democrats are more willing to give Republicans credit. So here's just one example, and there's a lot of charts that look like this. Just days after the networks called the 2020 election for Joe Biden, there's a poll asking Democrats and Republicans how they felt about the economy going forward. And suddenly, in that red line, Republicans feel very pessimistic about the economy. Democrats start to feel better. This is before Joe Biden was even sworn into office. But if you stay with this graph for a second, one thing I want you to notice there, the drop by Republicans is way more than the gain in Democrats. You see that? Like, Republicans are way more partisan in their view of the economy than Democrats, even though both sides are pretty partisan. So that's one of the things going on. There's a chunk of the population that is never going to give pollsters a positive reaction to a Joe Biden or Democratic economy. But for other folks who might not be very partisan or political, there's just a lag. There is a lag between when the economy starts to improve in the numbers and when people feel it, when they feel more secure. That lag is starting to go away. We're starting to see people catch up to reality. You could see it in consumer confidence numbers, which are improving. This is a problem for the Republicans because they want the economy to do poorly under Joe Biden.
We have an economy that's so fragile, and the only reason it's running now is it's running off the fumes of what we did, what the Trump administration. It's just running off the fumes. And when there's a crash, I hope it's going to be during this next 12 months. Because I don't want to be Herbert Hoover. The one president, I just don't want to be Herbert Hoover.
I mean, he kind of was Herbert Hoover because, again, he was president in 2020 when the whole thing crashed, so he's already that. Also, Lindell TV on Jan 6. Mwah, beautiful touch there. So Trump hasn't gotten his wish with the stock market, even though he's rooting for it to crash. The stock market is booming. The Dow is setting record highs. The economic recovery is so good that even Fox has to, begrudgingly acknowledge it.
Now take a look at this headline in the Washington Post. We bring it to you again because it was a kind of a standout. It says, falling inflation and rising growth gives the U.S. the world's best recovery. Steve Forbes with me this morning. I think the Democrats are going to run with that headline. I mean, they're just going to plaster this all over the place. But are they right? Does America now have the best recovery?
Well, yes.
I'll bet that the next time KJP or the president takes any kind of questions of any kind on the economy, that Washington Post article is going to be right there, front and center. We've got the best recovery. And that's a pretty good political slogan in an election year.
Yes, also helped by the fact that it is just plainly the truth. So it's getting to the point where Republicans can no longer ignore reality, right? Which is why, instead of denigrating the economy, get this, Donald Trump is now trying to take credit for it on social media, from one day to the next, which, of course, is the Trump playbook. Anything bad that happens isn't his fault, while he deserves credit for anything good under his watch. It's something his press secretary noted when the first full jobs report of the Trump presidency was released.
In the past, the president has referred to particular job reports as phony or totally fiction. Does the president believe that this jobs report was accurate and a fair way to measure the economy?
Yeah, I talked to the president prior to this, and he said, to quote him very clearly, they may have been phony in the past, but it's very real now.
Haha, very funny. Reality doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It's good when I say it. When I'm in power, it's made up when I'm not, right? That's the whole thing. But this idea that Trump actually deserves credit for the Biden economy is just too ridiculous to reach most people, honestly. Some hardcore partisans are going to be like, yes, it's a Trump stock market or whatever ludicrousness. But that's not going to work for most voters. That is why Republicans are simply trying to just change the subject. Change the subject. They love to talk about kitchen table issues and the price of eggs, all that stuff 6 months ago. Now, no, they are reaching for their political safety blanket, which is called immigration. That makes them feel safe when they're talking about immigration. So right now, they are trying to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary, the first time in 150 years to impeach a sitting cabinet secretary, 170 years, because they, get this, disagree with his immigration policy. They think he's not doing a good job. And they're doing this in hopes that Americans will pay more attention to immigration than the economy. And it's not a crazy idea. There are some signs it might be working. We got some polling out today that indicates that voters are starting to care more about immigration than the economy. The economy's fixed. Well, I don't care about that. But even as Republicans try to get you to chase a shiny object, it's crucial for Democrats and also for just fair-minded journalists and reporters everywhere not to lose sight of the facts. Again, setting aside politics and ideology, just based on the metrics we have, We have a lot of numbers about the economy. It's the thing we measure basically more than anything, okay? President Biden has done the best job digging the economy out of a deep hole that we have seen since FDR.
Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What? Who's the insect?
Protect you. They will defeat it on our world, and we will defeat them here.
This was just a diversion. Security, make bring up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
Evac, sir.
Right, evac.
She's right in front.
We are facing a heavy, sustained attack. They appear to be after the Allspark territory. General Washington! General! Need this immediately, General. Evacuate right now. Hold on. National security evacuation. Stand down. Check it out. There is a celebration for the amateurs for suicide mission.